Would you say this means this is reflective of the industry as a whole? Do you think Christian music as being a kind of subculture, a sub-genre, if you will, is kind of disappearing?
So my favorite one on this list is Lenny Kravitz. And I think we all know that name. And I want to fly away.
This was another one that I had to ask about. I was like, what in the world?
Broadcasting from Nashville, Tennessee, offering a glimpse inside the music industry, shedding light on things they don't want you to know, and exposing some of the industry's biggest secrets. You're listening to the Turned Up Podcast, presented by Real Sound Productions. Here are your hosts, Jake Jones.
Oh, happy day.
And Robert Venable.
Oh, happy day.
Oh, happy day.
That was Justin's part.
When Jesus walked.
When Jesus... I don't really know this song.
Oh, when he walked.
My wife would be so mad at me not knowing the lyric.
Oh my gosh.
I know kind of the song.
I know.
I know of the song.
I know it. I could do it.
I don't know the song.
There's like 5 words.
I wonder how many people actually know this song.
Oh, happy day.
That is some might argue, a Christian song, talking about Jesus walking.
Yeah, it sounds like...
Washing, not walking. Washing. He washed my sins away. What am I saying?
Well, he walked on water and he walked on land.
Did he walk on land? I don't remember the Bible talking about him walking on land.
In some cartoons,
water.
he kind of levitates, but I don't think he does that often.
I don't know what cartoons you're
Part
watching.
of having that cool little halo.
Oh man, as you can tell, we're going to talk about something a little different today.
It's a world that we in this room are very familiar with, but much to my surprise, I think because of just how I grew up, where I grew up, a lot of people don't know about this topic. But before you turn it off, we're talking about Christian music. Even if you have been listening to Christian music your whole life, you're going to be quite fascinated and blown away by what we have to say in terms of facts, as well as just some opinions and kind of where Christian music is going today. But if you notice, there's a third voice that you might not recognize.
That third voice isn't always here? I hear
might not recognize
voices. There it is, right there.
Yeah.
That one's really in the room.
Frontal cortex.
There's actually a real voice in the room today. Awesome.
I'm actually a figment of Robert's imagination.
Only my imagination, so Jake can't hear him.
Well, I want to start this one off by introducing you, Justin Forshaw. We talked about him. In fact, we talked about him a lot on the last episode.
The man, the myth, and the legend, all three.
Completely stoked to have him here as a guest today, and he is a #1 Billboard charting songwriter.
Yes.
Guitarist, formerly of the rock band We As Human, currently guitarist and singer of the band As We Ascend.
This might sound familiar, like something I say about Jake every week. However, it's also true for Justin, because they both play guitar and sing in the same band.
This is right.
We don't really have a singer or a guitarist. We have 2 singers and 2 guitarists.
Yeah, but Justin's the lead guitarist. He's just way better.
Justin's one
he
of the
earned that spot.
best guitarists I've ever heard in my life. And
hands down.
Yeah, I posted a video of you actually on my social media.
I was really humbled by that. It was really cool.
Just even practicing, which I'm surprised someone at your level even has to practice.
Oh,
but
my
obviously
goodness.
that's why you're at your level, because you continue practicing.
That's next week's
you gotta-
podcast.
It's just ridiculous.
You got to practice.
Dude.
So I kind of have my pre-tour ritual that I go through because I'll slack off. I'm at the point in my career where I like practicing, but I like being creative. So, but with creativity, when the technical stuff sits for a little while, you have to kind of get back on the horse and ride it so you don't get on stage and look stupid.
Rub a little Vaseline on it.
Yeah. Actually, Tiger Balm.
Put the lotion on. No, but he's also an accomplished producer, an engineer, and I was just listening earlier today to a country album that you're producing, and I'm like really impressed, man. Justin and I were doing studio work together for a while before he moved back up to Seattle, where he's from, and even just in the last couple of years, you're really blowing my mind. But yeah, he's a multi-instrumentalist as well, and this is true. A very good banjo player, which makes sense, I guess. But
I just learned this today.
Yeah, I just learned this today.
I know,
he was
right?
playing me a song. I'm like, oh, where'd you get those banjo loops?
Yeah,
Nope.
Well, I'm up in the Northwest now, so I'm way far north, but it's really, really country up there. If you get outside of Seattle, it starts bleeding red, and the banjo skills just naturally come to you.
So something about Justin that I do want to disclose on this podcast, and since we're talking about Christian music today, I'm calling on my Christian, my fellow Christians to join me in prayer. Justin does have a little bit of an addiction. We were talking about earlier.
Oh yeah,
a few.
And being a professional mourner, I mourn for you, Justin.
Yeah. Justin is addicted to breathing as well as drinking water, and occasionally eating food. What have you been doing? You told me that you just started a program on your own to try to kick this, right? Like what?
Well, it was going to be a 12-step program, but considering my condition, 12 steps that's too tempting. Since I struggle with walking and breathing, and when I walk, I tend to breathe more. Okay. So, and then at the end of the day, I found that leads to sleep, and I sleep a lot. I sleep, every day, and that's just it's tough, man. I got a lot. They all kind of lead together, so I'm fighting it. I'm just kind of
we're behind you, man.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
We're behind you. We believe in you, and
I believe in me, but I struggle with belief in myself sometimes too.
Sometimes you believe.
Yeah, sometimes I believe
things.
Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I believe things that I shouldn't believe.
Well, Robert thought you were just a voice in his head, so
I know. I still might be a figment. I don't know if I'm actually here right now.
I don't know if you're actually here right now. I'm so confused. The voice that you just heard introducing Justin Forshaw is my good buddy, Jake Jones. Jake Jones is also an accomplished producer and songwriter with a #1 Billboard charting song that he has co-produced and mixed and written and sang on and played guitar on. Because he is such a good singer and guitarist, he sings and plays guitar like we just had a second ago with Justin in the band As We Ascend. I just play drums, so I don't get to sing, which is probably a good thing for everybody.
Actually, I don't know. I heard
we'll get there in a minute.
I heard some of your vocals today.
And formerly of the same band, We As Human, which is, I'm guessing, is how you two originally met.
Yeah, we were the two new guys.
We were the noobs.
It was an awkward kind of first couple of, I don't know, months or maybe even longer than that.
Share a bunk?
You believe soon it will have been 10 years ago?
It's crazy. But I filled out an application on MySpace.
Yep.
And both got the gig and
posted a bulletin.
Had to figure out how that whole thing would work, being two new guitar players in a band that lost their guitar player and got these new guys now, and we're like, what's our place in this old machine? What are we doing?
The thing is, we couldn't be more different guitar players with different backgrounds, different styles, and I think that works really, really well.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that was true years ago, but now it's we've kind of turned into a conglomeration of each other's styles, especially working in the studio so much. Now it's like I can think like you.
We got band married.
We did. So now it's
buried.
like a Jake lick or this is a Justin lick, and we can both seamlessly kind of go in and out of each other's thought processes.
Which you heard the ad at the beginning of this podcast. We are on tour. That's why you're here. We'll get to that here in a second.
Right. Sorry. Let me
finish telling everybody how awesome
so many
I am.
Let me continue talking about
I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah. So if you, being one of the most talented mixers and producers that I know, honestly, not just kissing booty here, you need to go and check out jakejonesproductions.com to just hear some of the samples and some of the stuff that you and I have worked on together, but just a lot of just all sorts of genres. And all three of us, actually, Justin, Jake, and I, have a songwriting pub deal with Shoalsville Music. So you're also a very, very well, you're a songwriter.
Chad Green, man. Chad Green at Shoalsville. I do want to shout out to that man because he is one of the most amazing humans I've ever met. And he believed in us at the beginning of As We Ascend. He pushed us to do it, to turn it into a thing. If it weren't for Chad Green getting behind us and kind of rallying the troops.
I don't know that all three of us would be in the room right now.
I think he was literally the first guy that believed before we even really knew there was anything. We were just like, we got a studio now. We're trying to figure out what's next. And he just believed, got to do something. Yeah. You have to do a project. You guys are...
But if you're listening, Chad.
Yeah, hey. But Jake, I wanted you to tell me and our listening audience a little bit more in depth about how you've recently become an advocate for human branding. And I'm not the marketing type, but actually physical heated steel and iron. Yeah.
Well, I have two small daughters, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I can't tell you how many times we go to Walmart and I lose them. I've lost them for days before. I'm super lucky. Somebody either drops them off, down by the road, or and they find their way back up to the front door, or I go down to this place, the Pole Ice Departamente. I can't remember something.
Pole Ice Departamente.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And usually pick them up from there. But I had this genius idea to brand them. So they each have a brand on their arm. It's my brand. It's the Jones brand. And that way people know, because it's really tough when they take them to that Departamente to get them back.
They don't carry wallets or purses with licenses or anything.
Right.
Yeah,
I prefer to have the brand on there so that they know it's got my address and all that stuff, phone number. And so it's just an idea that I took on. I started posting it on my Pinterest board, and it started spreading like wildfire. I think at least one other person has done it. And so,
perfect.
Listen, brand your kids, brand, if you're married, especially men, brand your wife, let people know who she belongs to. She is your property and no one else's.
That is Jake Jones's opinion, not the opinion of Turned Up or Robert Venable.
Yeah, we just lost half of our listeners. I'm totally kidding. Oh my gosh, I would never do that to anybody, and no human is anyone else's property, and I would die on that mountain. That is the truth. No one is anyone's property. But that is the ridiculousness of my friend, co-host, and drummer Robert Venable.
Rippy V, baby.
Rippy V on the big bangs.
Standing in at 8'5", sitting at a whopping 2'3".
So are you still going to go through with that reverse bone graft?
Yes, I was thinking about all the bones I have, and then
really too many.
Getting rid of some. It's just like shedding some off as a form of weight loss.
Cool.
I've noticed I've gained 5 pounds or so
of just bone mass.
If you're big boned,
I'm assuming it's bone mass.
Yeah.
And people say I'm big boned or something like that. I hear that all the time. So I'm like, maybe I am. So I'm going to cut some out.
Whatever. Robert Venable's never heard that he's big boned a day in his life. He's a very, very attractive, fit young man.
Go on.
He's not young at all. He's
I'm the oldest.
Hundreds of years old.
Very attractive.
But no, Robert is very kind and humble to say that anyone in this room is accomplished at production or engineering in any way. But I'm literally I'm being blinded right now as the light is shining off of this Kelly Clarkson gold record hanging on his wall right in my face. The guy has worked very hard and earned every accomplishment he's gotten, whether it's a Grammy nomination, a Dove Award, the gold plaques, the number ones. He's worked his way into studios with guys like Dave Mustaine from Megadeth.
That was the first time I was ever in a recording studio with a real band.
Really?
This is my first major label credit.
Oh, wow.
Crazy, right?
Yep. Megadeth, as well as legends like DMX and Rough Riders, all the way to 21 Pilots and Mute Math. Of course, Kelly Clarkson. We were just talking about him working with Spencer Chamberlain of the band Under Oath. The guy has done everything. He is so good, and I've spent the last 2 days rehearsing for this tour coming up, listening to him play the drums, and every time he sits down behind the skins, I'm reminded how incredible he is at that.
And behind the drums.
In fact, Robert actually has his own brand of drums that will be coming out later this year called Big Bottom Drums. Now, what they use for drum heads is actually organic and from humans, but
recycled panties. It's a thing. You stretch it when the elastic around the waist goes bad. We re-elasticize them and we stretch the fabric over the top of the drum shell. And it gives us this really low end big bottom. And it's a pun, the big bottom.
Did they have a lot of sustain on them?
Some of them are sustained.
You'll be using these out on the City Rock Fest tour this month.
If you happen to catch any of those dates, the City Rock Fest tour with our band As We Ascend.
Ask Robert about his drum.
Yeah, come up and ask.
Big bottom
ask about the drum heads. Oh man, or the drum bottoms.
I'm scared somebody's gonna try to donate some.
No, please don't.
Drum heads.
No.
None of that business.
Okay. So we teased about this at the beginning of the podcast before we got into our crazy, silly introductions. But this episode is going to be about the Christian music industry because we've realized that a lot of people didn't know it was a thing. Like they know there are Christians out there and they know the music industry, but they didn't know that there were, bands and songs and a whole, industry dedicated to just Christian music. I mean, even we'll get into this, but Billboard charts, there are several of those dedicated just to Christian music, and the Grammys give awards to certain Christian and gospel, sections of the industry, which we'll talk about too, because that's diminishing. But there are dedicated Christian music record labels, if you want to call it that. But I guess we should probably start this whole podcast with what is Christian music? What defines Christian music? What
even is Christian music? Well, so that is a really tricky thing to truly define. And as time progresses, even the last couple of years, that definition has begun to change drastically. So in a very broad satellite picture of what is Christian music, first of all, most of the time, 99% of the time, when we're thinking of Christian music, we're thinking of what is actually contemporary Christian music.
CCM,
which really is, I mean, that could be Christian rock. That could be, there's several genres that we'll cover here in a minute, like versions of it, whether it's adult contemporary, CHR, soft inspirational. But CCM is what encompasses kind of all of Christian contemporary or current music. It started really, that CCM started in the 60s and came out of the Jesus movement.
With the hippies.
Yeah, they were trying to, whoever they is, were trying to, the church, I suppose, as a whole, was trying to have music that was kind of cooler and reached young people, reached the hippies, a little more effectively than hymns and Southern gospel and that sort of stuff. So Christian music, the type of Christian music we're talking about, is not hymns, not Southern gospel, not choir, type stuff. Although some hymns have been turned into contemporary Christian music.
A lot of them have.
Like if you're thinking about church music where they stand up and read out of a hymnal, that is not what we're talking about.
Let's poll the room real quick. Three of us here. When did you first discover that the Christian music industry was a thing? Justin?
I discovered Christian music from my wife.
Like after you were married?
Yeah. Well, so I came to the Lord when I was older. I was 17. Had a pretty crazy transformation, and God did a work. I did not grow up in the church. I didn't know anything about Christian music. But my wife grew up in the church, and she knew a bunch of Christian bands, and her parents didn't really let her listen to mainstream music. So she had a collection of artists that she let me listen to, and some of it was okay. Some of it was really good, and some of it not so good. But I knew that there was something in it. There was a different vibe, and I enjoyed it. Some of it really spoke to me. You know?
So what was the first thing you heard Christian music wise that you thought was good? Is there a moment?
Yeah, I'm really excited that you brought that up, because right now I'm in your partner Lester Estelle's studio, in your studio. You guys both kind of run this thing, and I was a huge Pillar fan. That was for me like the greatest Christian hard rock band ever. They still are.
Lester was the drummer from Pillar.
Yeah.
For years, yeah.
For years. And his drumming skills are incredible, but that was they were the real deal, And I love their music.
So you caught wind of a Pillar song and were like, oh yeah, Christian music's not bad.
It wasn't, so I think I came into it late. Where Do We Go From Here was the album that somebody at the church was just like giving out albums, and I was like, give me that, I'll check it out. And I loved it. The guitar playing, the songwriting, everything was like fantastic.
Gotcha.
Well, and side note, one thing that I always admired about Pillar was they were very original. Like a lot of kind of Christian rock bands that started coming up around that same time were, literally the producers and record labels were saying, we don't have an artist that sounds like Creed yet. Mm-hmm, yeah. So let's find an artist and write some songs that sound like Creed or whatever.
And by the time it actually hit the market though, there were 10 Christian bands that sounded like Creed, but Creed doesn't even sound like Creed anymore because Creed's already gone.
I think it was probably a really lucky find that was kind of what introduced me, because it was really good, and it led me to believe that there were some bands out there that had faith, that believed in Jesus and had a positive message, but their music was awesome, and it wasn't some clone of anything else. And I still listen to that.
Before you were saved or a Christian or whatever, or listened to this stuff, did you know there was a Christian music industry or not?
No, to be honest with you, not really. I think I knew that there was probably like some Christian stations that I would never tune into that might have their own little weird, obscure, crazy music. You see the little televangelists running around and slaying people with their coats, and they have the church organ in the background, and the some of the black choirs and stuff, which are actually pretty good. So I think I knew about that, but I didn't really know a whole lot about the Christian music industry, and I don't think I would have tuned into a station.
Christian radio is weird for me because they don't play the kind of music that a lot of the stations, the broader market Christian stations, don't play the music that I particularly personally like. My parents love it. My sister loves it. Like, I know people who really get into that, and that's just a genre preference for me.
Yeah.
But when I've turned them on in the past while driving, I'm like, nope. And I think that sentiment might be shared by a lot of people, especially non-Christians, how it could sound almost cheesy if you don't pay attention to it or don't know about it.
Oh, you're digging into the meat of our podcast.
Well, dang it.
Before we get any further, Robert, what about you? What was kind of your introduction to Christian music?
You know what? I grew up in a church where instruments weren't used in worship service. So a lot of a cappella, the whole congregation sang a cappella together. There wasn't a choir and there wasn't a band, but there was a song leader in the whole.
But that sounded really cool.
A lot of harmony, and that taught me a lot of, learn different parts rather than singing unison or singing the lead part of a song. I would sing what my dad sang, like the bass lines, or hear other harmony parts, which I guess might have played into a lot of my musical talent growing up. I ended up being in choir and band and all this stuff. But a band called A Cappella, which was
clever.
Yeah, right. Guess what kind of instruments they use. It's just 4 guys usually, and they rotate through. I think it might be like an internship of sorts where or a seasonal thing.
I've seen them.
Yeah, and that was my first concert ever, was an a cappella concert.
It was one of my first.
And I just became enamored with their style and harmonies, and what can you do in a live show with 4 guys just singing? I mean, they were entertaining to me, and maybe I was influenced at a young age, where I'm seeing this oh wow, lights and sound and really cool beatboxing and stuff like that. But I mean, think about it. There's a market for that because the pentatonics, right?
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's what that was. Just Christian lyrics. And I guess that was my introduction into the Christian music industry. And then I guess without being a cappella, the first full band thing I remember hearing was probably Jesus Freak, DC Talk.
Yeah.
And that's a story I hear from a lot of people is they heard that record. And I was like, man, that was when, there was a rap rock thing.
Yeah.
And that was Toby Mac and Kevin Max and Michael Tate. I think it was just the 3 of them. Right?
But I have to say, before Pillar, I did have an experience. My dad, my parents are divorced, so my dad would get me every once in a while in the summer, and we went to a Jesus Northwest concert, which was, I think, Creation West.
Oh yeah.
Before it was called Creation West, and it was right that weird, awkward '90s transition from the Petra. And then the DC Talk, so they're all kind of fighting it out for that sound. And I saw Petra, and then I saw DC Talk, and I was pretty stoked about it. I was a little kid. I was pretty young. So I think DC Talk definitely had something that people were pretty captivated by pretty early on.
I don't remember personally there being a part where, I don't remember not knowing of a Christian music industry. I mean, I had known Michael W. Smith as a name, and I'd known Amy Grant as a name, and Sandy Patty, and a few others, but I didn't care for that genre.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear rock and roll. I remember Jars of Clay came around, and I liked that, and Caedmon's Call, I liked that. Sixpence None the Richer.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool about that time. But I do remember being on a family reunion trip, and one of my cousins saying, after I'd already been a producer for a little while and done a lot of Christian rock production stuff, him saying, there's Christian music? I remember him just asking this. He goes, because I remember driving in a car and the guy asked me if I wanted to hear some Christian music, and it just sounded like country music to me. And I'd never thought of it that way. I'm like, what? Why? And I started listening to a lot of the CCM stuff, and I'm like, well, okay, well, a lot of it's produced by a lot of the same producers as country music in the same city.
Third Day.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, I hear that now. The acoustics drumming and the high strung stuff. And just the way it's produced out, it just sounds a little bit like country music. So if you don't know there's a Christian music industry and you hear this song, you might assume it's country. If the vocals were a little twangier, I guess.
Yeah, makes sense.
What about you, Jake?
Man, I did not know of Christian music growing up as a little kid. We listened to Nirvana, Spin Doctors, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Stone Temple Pilots, Pink Floyd. That was like the stuff I kind of grew up on and cut my teeth on just when I was young. That was like, to me, that's what music was. When I was 12, I moved in with my dad. I'd lived with my mom, and so I transitioned. I went from Austin, Texas to eastern New Mexico, a little town called Portales. My stepmom was a teacher at the Christian school that I started attending, and her and my dad went to church, and suddenly I wasn't allowed to listen to mainstream music, which I always knew it as secular music, and I didn't even know that was like a kind of a Christian term for a long time. Secular just meaning separate.
Secular. I always hated that. Secular. I hate that term.
Interestingly enough, I didn't know that there was such a thing as Christian music, like its own sub-sector of music. But I did have this friend named Frankie, who I guess there was like a Jesus Freak devotional thing that came on the radio in sometime in the mid-90s, and they would always play the song. And I remember him being stoked and like we were out playing and him being like, "Oh, it's almost 6. I got to get home because they're going to play Jesus Freak." And I remember coming into his bedroom and him turning on his little radio in his room and hearing this song. I had to have been like 8 or 9 at the time. But no, I moved to New Mexico and I had to leave my cassettes at home. I had Bare Naked Ladies, Stunt, and I had the Marshall Mathers LP. Those are the two that were mine that I loved. I listened to all the time.
They're both good records.
And my stepmom had some CDs. I don't know how she got them, where she got them from, that she just kind of like stuck in my room, was like, "Here, listen to these." And it was Carmen's Riot. It was DC Talk's Jesus Freak album. And then a Hillsong. And then there was like a popular worship band at the time. I can't remember what they were called. I remember the cover was like purple and green. It was like a picture of like hands up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway.
Oh, wait. That sounds so familiar.
Yeah. It was.
I gotta think about that.
They were like big for a minute and then kind of died away. But anyway, that was like, oh, these are Christian bands. And I didn't really listen to them for a while. I eventually cracked open the Jesus Freak record and I wore that thing out. In fact, I wound up later purchasing the entire DC Talk collection through BMG. BMG?
The mail order.
Dude.
Buy one at full price, get 5 for
12 free or something. Just pay shipping.
But the first Christian music that I called my own, that I loved and that I chose myself and listened to was By God by Disciple and Set It Off by Thousand Foot Crutch. Those 2 albums.
Nice.
And that was like, I'm into this. I love Christian rock. And eventually led me to say, this is what I want to do.
Dude. Do you remember there being a time like before you discovered that? Did you know of there being a music industry for Christian music?
No, I had no idea. No clue.
Huh.
So I was about 12 or 13. Is when I was like, oh, there's like a whole, like they have radio stations and sections at music stores that just sell this one kind of music.
Dude, like we were saying, like we've run into people recently even who had no idea that Christian music was a thing. Yeah,
before we started recording, I was actually telling Justin we were out back in the We As Human days. We were on tour with a band called Blackstone Cherry at a festival, and the guys from Hailstorm were there, and Lizzie and Joe had invited me back to their bus to listen to their new record they were working on. And Lizzie asked me something about our band being a Christian rock band, and Joe was like, "What are you talking about?" And her having to explain to him, like, no, it's like a whole thing. Like they have Christian music festivals and Christian radio and Christian record labels. Like he had no idea.
Dude.
And it was like, this is a man, Hailstorm is huge.
Right?
They're all over the world, well-traveled musicians, to think that, even someone in that world would have no clue that Christian music even existed.
They're not the only people who have said that. We've heard that from other people. But there are, the Christian music industry even has like spots on the Billboard charts. They have their own charts, which include Christian album charts, Christian songs, Hot Christian AC, which is adult contemporary, Christian CHR, Soft AC, inspirational, and Christian digital songs as well. So
as producers, this is something that we have to like pay close attention to because there's certain rules and things that kind of define the difference between a CHR song or an AC song. Or
I guess you're right. Or we want the song to end up on which charts or which songs to be played along with on the radio. We got to pay attention to that. Whether it be turn the electric guitars down and boost the acoustics or off. Yeah.
That's the worst idea ever.
Coming from an
turn
electric
the
guitar
electric
player.
guitars off. Turn the electric guitars off. Yeah, that's I had an experience with that on the We As Human record, the song "Taking Life." They wanted to turn the electric guitars down and have more acoustic guitar, so I had to go back in months later and record over top of that at a studio.
It's like a year after the album was already out.
Yeah, and the song didn't really chart or do anything, and just kind of felt dumb for going in and having to retry. I guess it was fun to play the acoustic in the studio, but I was left kind of going, why? Just keep the guitars in there.
And like you were saying, from producer's point of view, a lot of times our mixing outcome has to be like maybe vocals a little louder than the rest of the mix. Because, I mean, honestly, what's going to make it a Christian song as opposed to a non-Christian song? It'd be the lyrics, because you don't have Christian guitar chords. I mean, you might, but like you can't say, oh, since I'm playing
a Jesus. Oh, come on. We know that there's some Christian chords.
Jesus, I get it. But I mean, it's the lyrics, which I guess essentially would make a song more Christian than not. So a lot of the radio stations want to hear vocals up on Christian mixes.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, if you're going to be current,
it's all about the words.
Yeah, and the arrangement, instrumentation, obviously. The electric guitar kind of is in the hot seat a lot for not being as relevant in that scene.
That's Billboard. Billboard has these different charts.
But that's not to say that they're going to be solely on the Christian music charts. If you have a Christian music song, it can hit other charts, like the top 200, the big 200.
Yeah, Billboard 200. Even the UK has its own Christian and gospel chart. A chart now that actually matters a lot more than it ever has is the iTunes chart, the iTunes store.
Yeah.
It has its own genre, Christian and gospel.
And the Grammys even recognize Christian music, but they're kind of lumping it all together. Previously, there are 20 to 30 different categories that Christian music / gospel music has been awarded, Grammys for. But now in 2018, we're down to 5.
Looks like 2011, a ton of them dropped off.
I heard that they're handing those awards out in the alley by the dumpster.
Not televised. I mean,
not televised. And somebody just flies a drone out with a little 2-second aerial flyovers.
Drops off. That's about right. I mean, we're down to best gospel performance or song, best contemporary Christian music performance and song, best gospel album, which when you think of gospel music, I think of almost like folky, Americana gospel or like rootsy. But they're kind of
like
lumping
the
it all.
Gaither vocal band.
Yeah, they're kind of lumping this all together because a rapper could win that.
Yeah.
Best contemporary Christian music album and then best roots gospel album. When I had to look that up, I'm like, what is roots? So I guess that is more of the folky stuff. But so it's pretty much, they've weeded out a lot of the categories. They used to have best pop contemporary. I'm not going to read all these 20 something that they've killed.
Well, the next one on that list is the one that we could be up for, but aren't now because they killed it in 2011.
Right. Yeah. The best rock gospel album.
I just want to acknowledge that we probably won that one. Right now, we could resurrect it, and we could just say right now we won that one.
All right, congratulations, everybody!
Congratulations, guys!
Dude, wow, I'm proud. Let's go get pizza.
Like to thank the awards,
but not the Academy.
Not the Academy.
We voted for ourselves.
Not the Academy. We're going to just thank ourselves for having that idea.
This is a very, very, very long list of
it just goes on and on
Grammy
and on.
awards that do not exist anymore for
it's R&B, soul, gospel, like all this stuff, traditional, like this. It's sad.
Would you say this means this is reflective of the industry as a whole? Do you think Christian music as being a kind of subculture, genre, or if you will, is kind of disappearing?
I don't know if it's disappearing or not being as public, but still there.
Yeah, I mean,
here's a better question. Do you think it should?
Yeah, I think that the Grammys probably would like to distance themselves from anything Christian or religious at this point.
Why do you say that?
Getting raw.
Have you watched any TV or the news
or the recent Grammy performances? And
yeah, it's
there seems to be an agenda there.
There's an agenda that is very counter to the principles and teachings of Christ in general.
Well, my question to Robert, I kind of want to know your opinion. Do you think that the fact that there's fewer Christian categories is just a reflective of the Grammys changing their stance, or do you think that it's more representative of the state of Christian music as a whole? Do you think that Christian music is dying?
I would say it's both.
Do you think Christian music should die?
Yeah, I think that the divide with the culture right now is definitely separating itself a lot more. So, which would, create more of a gulf between the two.
But should Christian music go away as a genre of music?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it should go away.
What
I
about
kind of do, actually?
What if the music industry just was the music industry? And
well, that's my thought. I've had the awesome pleasure of working with some incredible Catholic artists lately.
Right.
And I personally am not Catholic, but they have some really great principles and some great ideas, especially as it comes to arts. And prior to the Protestant Reformation, and if you paid attention in high school, but prior to that, all the best art, period, whether it was music or painting or performances, theater, it all came out of the church.
Sure.
But we also know that the church was very corrupt. That's why there was the big Reformation. However, if you wanted to hear the best music, if you wanted to see the best art, you went to the church. I mean, the Sistine Chapel,
sure.
right? Like it all came out of the church. Well, then, after the big split and Catholicism was no longer the only religion or the only version of Christianity, you started to see this word secularism pop up. And now unfortunately, a lot of people, a lot of culture who are familiar with Christian music think of Christian music as not as good. Like you think of a Christian movie, you think it's probably instantly you think it's not going to be as good as
I agree. I think that there's some of that. I think that there's a new resurgence in just arts in the church that is happening. Not so much with the CCM land, but with worship, with some of the churches, Bethel, Elevation. I mean, there's some really, really good music that's coming out of the church right now. We'll get
to that because that's a whole other thing in and of itself.
That's a whole other thing, but I guess.
To stick with the awards, though, there are a couple of. I'm sure there's more than two, but there's two
bigger, more well-known awards
that are like the Grammys for Christian music. The biggest one, of course, is the Dove Awards put on by the Gospel Music Association, and it is it's a huge honor to be awarded a Dove Award, which one of the three of us has won one, Mr. Venable. Or I don't know how many, if you've won more than one, but
a few, but yeah.
And then of course the We Love Awards, which we just won two.
We just brought two of them home in the most recent one, yeah.
But I like where you were going with that, and we have a list here of, and I'm doing air quotes here, Christian bands.
But I mean, we don't even know what a Christian band is, but
right,
bands with Christian members, or maybe bands with Christian influence, or who maybe have positive lyrics. I don't know how you would explain this.
I think that there's a need to identify when somebody is a follower of Christ and their artwork kind of is interwoven into those beliefs. So I think we naturally tend to categorize things.
Right.
For the sake of commerce and for the sake of people being able to dissect that, if it's, if something that they're looking for, if it's something that would be offensive to them, I think there's always that need. And I think that anytime that, you're outspoken with your beliefs, that's going to happen just naturally.
I agree. And if you've never heard of the Christian music industry until this podcast, maybe some of these bands are bands that you're familiar with that actually contain Christian members or self-proclaimed as Christian bands, or religious, spiritual. I don't know. A lot of people don't like using those words, but have those kind of influences in their music. And let's just go down this list and see how many of these you might recognize and maybe didn't know that they had anything to do with Christian music at all. I mean, a band I was a fan of and still like is POD, Payable on Death.
Absolutely.
Not Pod.
Not Pod. Like, I like the band Pod. Tide Pod.
Lifehouse is actually another good one. And I saw them around the same time I saw Acapella.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they were good.
Lifehouse is great, man. Yeah.
I love this band, Switchfoot.
A lot of people have no clue that, that they're...
They were around for a long time before they ever hit radio. Before they hit, like, if you want to call it secular radio.
Sure.
Like,
I have a couple of great Switchfoot stories, but they were the band that would always show up right, kind of before they were going to go on. I think what Need to Breathe would always kind of be direct support for those guys in the circles when we were at festivals and stuff and the shows we'd play. And they're just the cool kids, man. You thought you were something special until Switchfoot showed up and you all just felt like a bunch of tools after that. Like, we are not that cool. And I missed out on a performance with the guys. We were doing something for Word Records in a little just apartment, something or other. It was like
in Disney World.
Yeah, was it? I don't know what it was. It was just some little building.
I think they called it the Millennium Conference, or
yeah, it was a conference, just some building. Everybody was just doing a really intimate acoustic set. Playing a couple of songs, and I was starving to death, ready to just commit murder. So I had to go eat.
I didn't realize you missed out on that.
I did. I had to go, and I was getting like hypoglycemic or something. I was mad and I was starving.
Hangry.
Yeah, and I heard it was like the greatest acoustic performance ever, and I missed it. Pretty cool.
It was awesome.
Oh, it was so
the
good.
greatest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yep. Did run into Michael Tate grabbing a burger, so that was cool. I made up for it.
That works.
So this band actually blows my mind, and you guys are going to have to educate me more on this one. Kings of Leon.
Aren't they from Colombia?
I don't know. I know they're from around here.
I love that band. They're such
fantastic band.
Fun, groovy, like boogie music that,
boogie.
It's boogie. It's just got this down home, like, there's something about it. And his voice is great. The writing's great.
Tell me, like, how did they make this list? What about them is like Christian influenced?
Well, they are sons of a United Pentecostal preacher.
Because they're brothers, right?
Yeah. And actually, if you look at the lyrics of their songs, some of them are actually about redemption. And I don't know off the top of my head if like they've done articles and said, hey, we are Christian dudes. But I mean, if you're raised in a church and still including some redemption qualities in your songs, there's got to be a little bit of influence there.
Makes sense. Of course.
Oh yeah, you too.
The sound that has shaped every Christian album ever that falls in that vein.
And every church guitar tone.
And that delay that goes on every worship song ever.
Dotted 8. What you gonna do without that, son?
Oh man. So my favorite one on this list is Lenny Kravitz. And I think we all know that name, and I wanna fly away.
This was another one that I had to ask about. I was like, what in the world?
Well, he actually was committed to remaining celibate for years, which is
that's cool.
Yeah, which is awesome.
If you're Lenny Kravitz or at the Lenny Kravitz status,
that might be hard to do.
It'd be very difficult.
Yeah.
And has a huge tattoo of a cross on his back to remind him of his faith.
That's cool.
As well as supposedly the song "Go My Way" is about Jesus.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, well, neither did I.
Another band, and we could go on for days, but I did want to add this one, Mumford and Sons.
Didn't know that.
I didn't know that for a long time, and but they are. I know for sure their singer at least is a believer in God, and their music definitely reflects that as you listen. A lot of their songs, especially on that first record.
You know what?
Very good band.
Not to kick a dead horse here, but two like very relevant bands, 21 Pilots and Mute Math.
Yeah.
Both lots of Christian influence, and even I remember working with them in the studio during sound check stuff. They would just start breaking into some old, I call them youth group songs we used to sing in the church and youth group.
That's
and
cool.
Like all 6 of the members, the 4 Mute Math guys and the 2 21 Pilots guys just started doing that. In fact, 21 Pilots is topping the charts half the time. Christian rock charts.
One of the guys used to be in a Christian rock band, right?
Josh Dunn, yeah, the drummer for 21 Pilots, used to play drums in House of Heroes, which was a Christian rock band.
that is going to conclude this week's episode of the Turned Up Podcast, part 1 of the Christian music industry. Listen, we have so much to say about this. The three of us, personally having worked in this field for a long time, we've worked from the studio side as well as the touring side. We've also worked in the Christian and the non-Christian music industry. You're not going to want to miss part 2, so make sure next week, Monday, you head over to iTunes or CastBox or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts and download part 2 of this. You're not going to want to miss it. We get deep into the meat of this topic. It's a great one. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you hit us up online. That's going to be at Turned Up Podcast, whether that's Instagram or Twitter, and of course, Facebook.com/Turned Up Podcast. You can always go to turneduppodcast.com and check out all of our episodes, as well as see mine and Robert's beautiful faces. We definitely want to hear your thoughts on this. Definitely want to know what you think. Do you listen to Christian music? Maybe you've never heard of Christian music before, and this is your first time or your introduction to Christian music. We want to know, so hit us up, shoot us a direct message, an email, whatever you want to do. We love hearing from you, and hey, if it's something awesome, we'll be happy to retweet it and share it. Thank you again, and until next week, this is Nashville signing out. Peace.